I'd like to call the Site Plan Review Committee to order. Roll call, please, Terry.
Mayor Kodowski.
Here.
Gary Paul.
Here.
Dennis Persick.
Here.
Chris Atkinson.
Here.
Dale Quinn.
Here.
And Pamper and Krowski are excused.
Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I need a motion to approve the agenda. I have no changes.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Action on the minutes from the Site Plan Review Committee regular meeting October 20th.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion to approve with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, review plans for the following locations. 6A, action regarding proposed rehabilitation of the Orchard Ridge Apartment Complex, 956 Willard Drive, parcel VA-120-4. Aaron.
Okay, Orchard Ridge apartment complex on Willard, right next to Target, so the corner of Willard and San Luis. General Capital, on behalf of the ownership group, has requested site plan review for a couple of small additions to the existing apartment buildings, as well as the addition of a clubhouse to the property. General Capital was awarded WIDA tax credits to rehabilitate the development. They'll be expending quite a bit of funds, tax credit dollars, into the rehabilitation of the units themselves. So overall, it's a good project to see the reinvestment in the development. As indicated on the site plan, I was going to walk you through what some of the changes are up here. As you see in the lower right-hand corner, this is an overhead view of Orchard Ridge. This is San Luis. This is Willard. What you see here are proposed additions here and here to these two north-south complexes right here. Proposed additions are vinyl lap siding, again on the south end of these two buildings right here. The additions are meant to be fully handicapped accessible to provide better accommodations for those residents. In addition to these two additions, this is the proposed clubhouse building, which will be located right here in the center of this courtyard, as you can see in the lower right-hand corner there. Proposed for the clubhouse, I believe that's fiber cement, hardy plank fiber, which would actually meet our code, but would require a 3-foot minimum wainscot on that as well. So there's some questions as far as allowable materials for the additions as well as for the clubhouse. In terms of our requirements, we do allow 25% hardy plank for each exterior elevation. So there's in my conditions of approval, you'll note we do address that. A couple additional engineering comments or conditions of approval regarding some basically timbers that are in place right now to maintain some, act more as a retaining wall up against the sidewalk. And there's some conditions from Tim for forestry as well. Bike and Ped did request bicycle parking facilities in the courtyard areas of both complexes here, consistent with the Ashwaubenon Park Bike and Pedestrian Plan. Mr. Sig Strautman with Strutmanis with General Capital is in the audience. He did have request for flexibility on the exterior materials for the additions as well as for the clubhouse. So any questions for Sig? I guess he's here. You know, if you talk to Craig into the microphone, okay, so they can make sure they hear you.
How's that? Okay, there you go.
Yep, good.
Thank you.
I'm here to answer any questions, but if it's helpful, I just wanted to describe, I'll call it the rationale behind looking at some flexibility with the siding materials. as Aaron pointed out, the additions on the ends of these existing, of the ends of the townhomes are to add an accessible, handicap accessible unit, basically in a bathroom on those floors. And this is optional. It really came out of some work with the ADRC in town that was looking for, they're definitely looking for more accessible units in these affordable townhomes. And so we're trying to accommodate that potential. And I know that cost is not, a consideration, is we're trying to blend these additions in with the existing fabric, I guess you could say, of the complex. And we were hoping that when we looked at that end elevation, you'd look at the brick that's above, that's kind of behind, right? So there is some brick that's actually facing the street above it, and we'd view it kind of in the context of the whole, of the whole view. If you look at the end elevations there. And then as far as the vinyl siding, we don't like vinyl siding. We wouldn't use vinyl siding. Here again, we're just trying to not introduce a new material. There's vinyl siding there now. It'd be our hope that we could actually re-side all of those areas that you're seeing with siding, and then we'd use hardy. But if we don't, it'd be introducing a new material. So I just put that out to the committee just for the consideration. And then we're happy to do those in hardy, by the way. Actually to skin the additions. And then the last thing, as far as the community building in the courtyard, again, we're just trying to meet that kind of colonial, I'll call it, architectural vocabulary. We want to keep this very simple. And also it's located in the courtyard, away from the street. And we're hoping, again, we just want to do the right thing and work with the village here. But that's why, we asked for this flexibility. And we just like to discuss it, I guess, to put it that way. But I'm here to answer any questions about any of this.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions here. Aaron, what's presented on the packet that we got, these are all in compliance with the ordinances that we have with the village that pertains to this property?
Ordinances in terms of the proposed additions or the existing buildings?
For the existing buildings.
The existing buildings, yes, they're in compliance.
Okay, all right, so then what he's asking for is basically a little less, let's say, cement board is what he wants to use or wants to downsize.
Go ahead, Sig.
If that's okay, I'll clarify.
If you could just talk into the microphone.
Oh, sorry, okay. So on the additions, we'd be happy to clad those in hardy. They're proposed as vinyl now just to match the siding that's there now. But we're happy to do that in hardy, but then again, we're introducing a new material. That's my only concern there. And then the community building is entirely hardy. So that would, that sets the tone for using hardy in the complex.
Okay. As long as I've been on this committee, this is the second time this property is being, per se, redeveloped. I go by there periodically. It's a tough one to keep that place clean. I do believe you have a new manager in there that runs a pretty tight ship, is what I got from some safety officers, saying that she is somebody not to fool with.
That is the
That might be
word.
putting it a little tough, but I heard she does a good job for you, which is good to hear. I've got a hard time going with your recommendation here for the simple reason, if we give it to you, the next one's going to come along and say, hey, you gave them a break, we want a break. We've been through this so many times within our village here with people trying to cut corners. And, sometimes they're legit. I can understand yours, but to give you an okay on this, that means somebody else is going to come in and want an okay. we've had some projects here that were, we could probably see our way through it, but we still wouldn't grant it because of the next person coming in. The materials that fit our ordinances here, I like for the simple reason, this, it's good for rough use, and you've got some rough tenants there if they're not being watched. And that's why I think our ordinances fit this type of property. So I don't have a problem on the way you submitted it, but I do have a problem with this. Not because of you or anything else, it's just the way we operate around here, trying to stay consistent with what we do have for all the people. So if there's no other questions, I'll move to approve the project as presented with staff conditions and not the exception of cutting costs as presented in this letter that we just received.
Does that go for the clubhouse as well, Gary?
Yes.
What is there's still a 3-foot wainscot requirement on the clubhouse, Aaron?
Yes, there is.
Chris, can you talk into your mic,
Oh,
please?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Chris, you're a carpenter.
So we
You've got
have,
some good
just,
ideas.
excuse me
Am
just
I
a
right
minute
or
though.
wrong on it?
We have a motion, I need a second before we can discuss it.
Oh, second, just so we can. have a
Okay,
discussion.
we have a motion and a second, so now we can discuss it. Okay.
I mean, the hardy siding is definitely, I agree with you 100%, that's the way to do it.
Get to the mic.
As for the masonry, I mean, if that's what's in our village ordinance, then obviously we would want to keep following that.
I was just going to add that I agree with Gary, and this has nothing to do with this project, and nothing to do with you, Sig. It's just, if we grant those exceptions to you, everybody that's going to come through and we request that, and we'll have to do it for them, and that's where it becomes a problem.
That vinyl siding too, down low to the ground on an apartment building, it seems like whoever does their landscaping and lawn care, they don't care, and they're, within a year, there'll be holes in it from rocks and everything else, and it just, I think it devalues the properties, to be honest.
I think I'd have to agree, given my experience with vinyl
Yeah.
siding in residential uses.
Right.
Even in residential uses, while it looks nice, it's a poor, you hear me in my screen? It's a poor substitute for something a little bit stronger, and especially with regard to that kind of thing and kids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if I understand you correctly, the addendum here that we got, your concern partly is just consistency. Is that right?
Yeah, in effect, yeah.
In fact, is that primarily your concern?
Well, the other concern I have can't really be your concern, which would be the cost of it. And I respect that. I mean,
Right.
I want to,
Right.
we want to, I'll reiterate, we want to do the right thing.
Right.
We just want to put it out there for discussion, which we're getting the feedback, I understand.
And I think, if I've understood Gary's comments too, we're looking kind of not only at a concern for precedent, and I'm all on board with that because I've seen it in other venues, but also long-term durability and I don't know what you'd call it, but having the property look good for a long time, which I'm assuming, Aaron, is part of the rationale.
Correct.
So just to get that out there.
Understood.
Just looking, I'm assuming these pictures are fairly current pictures that I'm looking at here. Look at all the things that I see in the front view of the property, which would be the roadside. You're seeing stools, chairs, grills. You look at the backside, you don't see none of this on the backside that I'm seeing in these pictures. I do see one grill, I think. Those are all roadside things that we don't like to see. And then to come along and try and downsize on the materials for cost efficiency, it just don't work. So I think our motion here is
Okay.
well within reason.
I would agree.
Okay, does everybody remember and understand the motion?
Could we restate that, please, just for clarity? The motion?
Terry?
He just stated approve as proposed with staff conditions.
And then not to go with the flexibility to,
All right.
okay? Everybody understands that?
Yep.
Any more discussion?
I'm going to just bring up one thing, and I know rental properties are an issue with garbage. I'm looking at the garbage or the garbage enclosures here. Is that something new on that property that you're redoing?
We're redoing, it's not new. We're trying to make it more durable.
Okay, I've never been on the property other than going by it on both side streets, but that's an important thing on the apartment living is dumpsters. I got one pig alongside of me where my shop is, and, you know, they know all the rules and regulations and they don't follow any of them. The tenants I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But the landlord should be made aware of this and go by, and I think we're pretty flexible on garbage and enclosures, but boy, they sure don't follow the rules very well, so. It's
Yeah,
good
the,
to see you have this
Yep, the
included in this.
Yeah, the proposal really beefs up the dumpster enclosure pretty nicely. It'll do a nice job there.
I like what I'm looking at here.
And what I'll add, if you notice, there's a side entrance now where people could come in and drop their stuff into the dumpster and not rely on those doors being open, because then they just leave the doors open. So this is kind of a little bit of improving just the durability of it and also the functionality.
That's a very good idea, that door there, because too many tenants will open the door and never close it properly.
And then the wind hits it and rips them off, and they look worse
Yep,
than
yep.
the dumpster sitting there in a year.
You know, you being in this business, if the big door, when the refuge company comes to take the container out and unload it, and they wreck the door, you ever run into those problems?
All the time.
That's the one I see most commonly. It's not the owner, it's the people that are taking care of the service.
Well, my favorite is when they come with the fork and actually will try to open the door with the fork so they don't have to get out of the car, out of the truck. So what we try to do is make them as, as durable as possible, and then think, you can attempt in your contracts to say, like, if you damage the enclosure, it's on you, but you can chase them all day long. It's basically, you just have to have it durable enough and replace the thing
Yeah,
regularly.
yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
So we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, 6B, action regarding site plan review
here.
for proposed senior housing and townhome development at 680 block Mike McCarthy Way, parcel VA-56-4-1. Now, this project, before we start this discussion, this is a proposed project. We are looking at the site plan, and it would be, if we approve this, it would be approved with us working with the developer. So,
Right, yep. So this also is a general capital project, which, I'm very happy to see that they must like working with us with these two projects all on the same agenda. This is a affordable senior housing project on Mike McCarthy Way. The proposal, as you see on the screen, is basically a three-story apartment building right here. Here's Mike McCarthy Way. And then these units back here would be roughly 1,400 square feet, two-story townhomes, also affordable townhomes for rent. This is Borvan back here. Parking and drive lanes, as you can see, they are exterior. There was initial discussion about having underground parking, but due to the high water table in this area, it's not feasible. Since I actually wrote the staff report, I was contacted by one of our new trustees, Jay Krieger, who asked, how feasible is it to have some sort of covered parking, whether it's carport or otherwise. I mentioned that to SIG, and it's something that we're working through and think that certainly can be taken a look at. Since this project is within the Sports Entertainment District, it does go to Plan Commission and Village Board for final approval. And as Mary had mentioned, this is also subject to a development agreement between General Capital and the Village Board. The project is further contingent upon WIDA tax credits, which again, General Capital will be applying for in mid-December. So that deadline is rapidly approaching, and the goal is to basically have a shovel-ready project at the time of the application so that WIDA can look at it and say, yes, if we do award these credits, we know it's a real project, and they hit the ground running following the tax credit award. There is some concern regarding the location of the senior housing development adjacent to U.S. Special Delivery, as far as the trucking firm there and possibly the entertainment venues further to the west. That's something that I'll let SIG touch on a little bit as far as what they've researched and kind of come across as far as how they can hope to mitigate some of that concern. So we do have a few conditions of approval regarding the development agreement. The land is actually owned by the Community Development Authority, so it would be contingent upon sale of land by the CDA. Concealed fasteners for any metal wall panels, screening, again, pretty common requirements that we have in our code, just reiterating them in the list so that they aren't forgotten. There's some utility work there as far as stormwater, 12-inch stub capacity. Public safety, a couple conditions on there, which I believe already had probably addressed as far as the drive lanes. Private fire hydrant will need to be taken a look at as far as the laydown area, 400 foot for the hose. So those are all just items that certainly can be addressed with staff and with SIG's team. So I guess I'll let SIG kind of take it from here as far as the location and some of the noise concerns that were brought up previously.
Sure. I guess a couple of things, just very specifically to address the noise and potential noise and entertainment nature of the site. We actually are, in looking at it again after we heard that the village board had brought up some concern at the closed session, the previous closed session on the subject, we really dug into this. We talked to our market study provider. We went and looked at the site again, and really just tried to understand what those potential issues could be and how we could address them. And basically, from an entertainment and kind of an activity level, we're thoroughly convinced that our seniors, the active seniors, the profile of our residents, they will like to be in an active environment. We do not believe that on its face, just being in a busy place is any kind of a detriment. In fact, we found that in our market study, people will say that that's what seniors want these days. Typically more activity, and also they tend to be employed later in their retirement, things like that. So this is actually a great location from that side of things. Specific to what we can do on the building and with landscaping and things like that, there are really two things. One is just looking at the boundary against a trucking company, and a couple of things to note. A lot of this, now while this use may shift and change, and frankly, eventually may change drastically, but where it is right now, how the use operates, a lot of storage happens on that west side of the property, and the main facility where all the activity is probably a couple hundred feet to the east. That's just my first observation. So the first thing we want to do is along that property line, one of the staff's recommendations was to look at a fence, something more opaque on that side of the property, and to beef up the landscaping. And both of those things are something that are easy to do, and we would like to do that just to kind of establish an edge to the property. And then as far as the building itself is concerned, you'll see that a couple things are happening just with the layout. One is that the L shape is really on the west side of the property, and the short end of the building is closest to that side of the property. And in fact, it's about 60 feet off of the property line. And there are two units on the very end of the building, times the two floors, up to upper floors. So really 4 units, you could say, are the closest to that property line. And the rest of the units are really down the hall and of course, then several hundred feet from the property line. So not as directly impacted by noise as even if it were, there are a lot of disruptive noise. And then related to the building itself, there's numerous things that we can do and we're willing to commit to. We've listed those in basically I'll call it a little overview to the village board, and they include things like increased air gaps in the cavity. It includes things like continuous air barrier, liquid applied air barrier to the exterior, which actually helps not only just with air leakage, but also with sound transmission. And then on the inside, using things like sound attenuating clips on the drywall. We do that between floors, so you have some deadening, between the floors. You can also do that on the exterior walls that are impacted. So those are things that are technical things that we can do to address, like literally, noise concerns that you could have of a use next door. But also in the long term, I guess the last thing that we, case that we made is this is a rental apartment community. It's not a condominium where you could end up with situations where there's legal battles between owners and things like that. Basically, we own and manage this property, and we've had these situations, I was telling Aaron, very rare. But if there's a resident who is so dissatisfied with living here that it's not the right fit, etc., then we can go through a process that we just call non-renewal. And that isn't the same as eviction. It's basically, on an annual basis, there's verifications of residency that happen, and one of them could be simply that this resident is so disruptive or just is not a good fit. And we will take that and we can run with it from a management perspective. And that also goes with communicating with the village of those kind of disruptions, right? And we would reinforce with our residents that if there's an issue, let us know. We'll deal with it. We're the first route to deal with issues, and we'll have I'll call it a high communicative type of relationship with the village so that we can be the first order of, first layer that our residents would talk to. So I guess at the highest altitude, we as the developers, we wouldn't be thinking about this investment in this location if we didn't believe in it. I mean, there's literally millions of dollars at stake from our company's perspective. And we're also talking to our professionals, our managers, our advisors, and they've really reinforced that it's, we understand this, we got it, we understand it. And we as developers also feel pretty strongly that we understand it. And together with some of the technical issues, we feel like this is a great location. So we're feeling good about it. And so with that, we say that, from a design and development perspective, for the committee to consider, we'd be willing to add those conditions, whatever it may take, so that we can address some of the sound attenuation and, some of the sensitivity issues.
Okay.
I have a question with respect to sound attenuation.
Yeah.
Aaron, what's the code for maximum fence height in an area zoned that way?
They can go up to, I believe it's 8 feet. I guess don't quote me on that. It's either 6 or 8. It's right in there.
Okay, and without concerning myself right at this point with the view from within the building, how many stories is the side that faces the east? It's 2, right?
So the townhomes are 2 stories, right? And then the L-shaped building is 3 stories.
Okay, so, and with respect to, are you familiar with Interstate 41 in the Appleton area coming up here? And all the houses along that highway have a fence, which I'm assuming is 6 to 8 feet in addition to the berm, not or the berm, in addition to the berm. It seems to me that there's been a lot of research put into that, and that's what supposedly works to take care of a large amount of noise. I'm just going to throw that out there for consideration that, that might make more sense. Anybody have any thoughts on that? In other words, from the trucking company to have something more than just a 6 or 8 foot fence would attenuate the sound more significantly. I'm just trying to think of myself sitting in one of those apartments, and
one
I've
of the
worked with semis before, and they're not quiet, especially at night. Or,
Right. One of
Any
the,
comments, anybody on that? Or
I guess
did you
one-
comment on that?
one issue with, and I say an issue, but we start talking about berms, there's certainly a space
Right.
within which the berm has to be located. And as you can see, the townhomes are actually, I don't say tight to the property line, but they're close. So my concern is that someone would walk out their back door and immediately
Yeah.
walk up to a berm. And that, I guess, I'm not as concerned about the noise, quite honestly, with the townhomes as much as I am with the senior housing component of this. Because the townhomes are not age restricted, just the apartment building is. And I believe what the SIG has kind of laid out in terms of the approach that they're looking to take with the apartment building, I think it certainly can attenuate or, kind of address any concerns that I had regarding the noise issue.
Yeah, when it comes to the noise, I've told Aaron this, I'm kind of doing my own little independent study. I know a lot of people that live in Ashwaubenon, a lot of people who weekly say to me, Mary, we need senior housing in Ashwaubenon, we need senior housing. So I've asked them, if there were a senior housing project that was located on Mike McCarthy, and that's a very active area, and we want that area even more activated, would you live there with knowing how busy it's going to be? And I've probably talked to, I don't know the exact count, probably about 9 or 10 people so far, and there's only 3 of them that have said no. And the 2 of them that said no were because they're not leaving their house. So it wasn't even a situation of would they consider it, it was a situation of, well, I'm not going to move anyway, so no, I wouldn't live there. So, so just trying to get a handle on that, because that was a concern. But I know that today at site plan, we are only addressing the site plan.
Correct. Yeah.
So all that is all yet to come. So,
How noisy is that side? That backs up to the senior housing? Like, is it a constant?
No, it's not constant.
No.
No, it's a cross-dock facility, so it's not a trucking terminal per se. It's not like a FedEx or
So
anything like
it's
that.
not somebody constantly going back, it's
Correct.
just, you're gonna get noise on and off. So it's similar to living in line of an airport.
Probably, yeah.
So at that point, I would say, airplanes go over the top all the time for where I'm at. You kind of get used to it. Plus, at my house, we have highway noise and I don't even hear it anymore.
right.
Yeah, and I guess I wanted to bring up the noise aspect of it, just because I know that was a concern that was kind of voiced previously. I want to make sure it was brought up to the site plan review committee. But in terms of the committee's role, and then ultimately plan commission and village board as far as site plan approval, we are looking at the physical makeup of the site. I do try to address some of the sound concerns with the fencing and the landscaping, because I think that as a site plan consideration seems to make a lot of sense. And then as far as the other conditions of approval, they're pretty straightforward. In terms of the exterior elevations, we just, a couple of examples here. I think it matches well with the previously approved, or the what Merge has kind of proposed for the property. We haven't brought through their formal site plan yet. That should be coming in soon. But it's still kind of the same, kind of more modern urban type look that we're shooting for in this area. So the apartment building you see up on top here, this to be fronting on Mike McCarthy Way. And to the south here, this is fronting on Borvan down here. Just another elevation of the apartment building itself. So, I think it's a project that I know since I've been hired here, and I believe it's probably even in my interview, the question was, how is it going to bring senior housing to the village of Ashwaubenon? So I know this is something that the village has been looking for. It's just, it's from a site plan review committee, I believe it makes sense.
Yeah.
I really don't have a problem with this project. We've got a lot of time and money stuck on Mike McCarthy Way. It's time we get something developed. We do have a project going across the street. All the concerns that were brought up in other meetings that I've been was location and noise. You're not going to have development and use noise and location. These people here that come in front of us know what they're doing. They wouldn't be putting this project here if they didn't do the research on the area that they're putting it in. The trucking company that's there, which I'm not going to elaborate on, is just a transferring company from point A to point B. It's not a manufacturing company. I don't believe they're coming and going all days or all times of the day and night. The only noise that is produced there is trucks switching from one trailer to another. The inside of the warehouse is nothing more than a lift truck taking something from point A and putting it into point B. There's no equipment other than lift trucks running in there. So I don't have a problem with that. And like Aaron says, we're here to approve the site. It meets all of our regulations. I think it looks very nice. Like I said, I do not have a problem. I was the only one that voted for the project. Everybody that we did have a meeting with, they didn't like the area. They thought it should go someplace else. We've been looking for senior housing as long as I've been around the village. We do not have it yet. I know scoring of this is important to where it goes, and the reason they're putting it here is because they feel as though they can get the credits they need in order to get the correct financing. So I said my two cents worth. I will go along and repeat myself. I think it's a great project to continue researching and hopefully making it work in our village, and it's something long overdue.
I would agree with Gary. Like, this is a fantastic project, and I personally think that it's a great spot for it. Seniors want to be active. They want to go out. Even the senior housing up by Woodside, it's amazing how many people actually come out of that building and walk all the way down to Oneida Street to do whatever they want to do. They're shopping, to go to Barnes & Noble, whatever, and walk all the way back. Senior housing is all about what you have to offer for them to do. So if there's places for them to be able to walk out and go do something, they will do it. I think it's a good spot.
You know, in time, this whole area is going to change. We need something to get started, like this project, the one across the street, and things will start changing. You know, we've had something going at one time. Through the virus, we kind of lost that. People are snooping around that general area for other developments. So, you know, I don't know if I'll see this whole thing change, but we're definitely going to see change in the next 5 years on that project. And some of these things that that some people don't like, they'll be gone in time. You know, they just can't afford to be there anymore. It's that simple. It's a great location.
It is, and it's going to turn over. That whole area is going to get redeveloped at some point.
Well, I think that was you going back, I don't know, at least 3, 4, 5 years when Mike was alive. That the concern was it wasn't going to all happen at once.
Right.
And this is a good way to get the ball rolling further. And I agree with you guys from that standpoint. It's been talked about forever, and it's a good thing. So.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve with staff conditions.
Second.
there's a motion and a second to approve with staff conditions. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
This will go then to Plan Commission at tonight's meeting at 5:30, and then to Village Board at the end of the month.
Okay,
Warm up the
Thank you.
shovel handles.
Great project.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
okay, number 7, department reports. Aaron.
I'm very happy to report that Katie will be back in the office starting Monday. Based on what in talking with her a little bit via text message, she's very anxious to get back as well. So it'll be a big relief to me as well as Eric being able to split up some of that workload a little bit now again. So we're very happy about that. And then as far as next meeting, have a happy Thanksgiving. We have no agenda items for the 17th.
There you go. So we won't be back in session at site plan until the first Tuesday of December,
Right?
okay?
For me.
So I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. We're done. Thank you, everybody.